Committee meeting. And our first order of business would be to approve our minutes from February 9th. And I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reviewed the minutes that have been put on our iPads and everything, and I find them in order, and I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion carries. All right, next up is our investment report. Our buddy, Mr. Beatty. Good to see you, sir.
I'm burning.
Interest rates continue to climb, thankfully. Our bank rate is 4.275%, and the LGIP rate is 4.51, so a little over 4.5%. And we have started, it looks like rates may continue to rise for a little while based on Fed testimony before Congress this week, and the market has reacted. But this last month, we were able to buy some securities for 4.81% and one for 5%. And next month, I will report we've got some over 5%. We're locking in a little longer, so if rates start to drop, those are pretty good rates and have helped us a little bit. My reports.
Well, that sounds good. Not necessarily that interest rates are going up, but that we're going to profit a little bit from it.
It all depends on whether you're borrowing or saving, right?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion to approve the report. A couple seconds, Commissioner Gooch. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next is our fund condition report. Call on our finance director.
Good evening. Got a couple things to report tonight. First, we'll talk about our February cash balances. Our total operating funds at the end of February were $527,285,098.58, and our total borrow funds were $33,733,660.78. Then I want to touch on a couple of things as far as revenue, kind of where we stand as of February. First thing I want to point out is our adequate facilities tax is 2.35% up from prior year. Our sales tax continues to be up 8.69%. However, last month I did report that sales tax has started to trend down. That downward trend has continued. So earlier in the year, we were consistently bringing in anywhere from 8 to 10% growth in sales tax. Last month I reported it was around 3%. This month it was around 4%. So we are seeing that to slow, that growth slow. I just want to point that out. Our hotel motel tax continues to be up. It's up a little over 15% as compared to last year. So that's some good news. Some more good news, as the trustee stated, interest rates are up, so we are collecting significantly more interest income this year. So that's really good. And then as of February 28th, we have collected 88.63% of property tax. So that's good news. And as you can see on your revenue report, that's very consistent with prior years. So we are on track there as well. And then one thing I do want to point out that I did just get today, about an hour ago, was I have been, just of note, kind of where we stand with interest rates. Interest rates can be good, as I just mentioned, because we're getting a lot more interest revenue. Now, here's the downside to interest rates. So I did communicate with some of our bond counsel and investment advisors today, and they are advising me that bond rates are climbing, and he anticipates, if we were to borrow today, that the interest rate would be around 3.75 to 4%. If we were to borrow today on a 20-year bond. So I am constantly monitoring that as we approach the budget time and as we approach borrowing for future projects. So I did want to report that. That's a little out of the norm that I report, but I did want that to be noted. We are watching that. And with that, that is my report.
You've heard the report. Are there any questions? Commissioner Johnson?
So, Michael, basically, you're saying there's nothing catastrophic happening is with the sales tax and hotel motel tax. It's maintaining.
Correct. The reason I point out that sales tax is historically 3 to 4% growth in sales tax is very normal. What is not normal was the 10% we were seeing, or even higher than that last year. So we are getting kind of back to normal level of sales tax growth as the last 2 months.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
A motion?
I'll second, but I have some questions.
Second, Commissioner Irby. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Commissioner.
Since we're kind of getting in that season where there's discussions about significant items with a lot of potential cost attached, you know, Michael, as you know, the current year's budget that was approved last June had a deficit of about $64 million. That is, appropriations exceeded estimated revenues by about $64 million. For reference, that deficit was about double the deficit in each of the prior 2 years. That deficit was about $31 million for the budget approved in '21 and about $28.6 million in '20. And so to balance the budget, the county used fund balance. Now, while we continue to be a growing county, I have concerns about continuing to run significant deficits over time. It does not appear to be sustainable. I want to ask the director, would you provide some further explanation and context for the deficit and its effect on the county's fund balances?
To expand on that a little bit, you are correct. We did start the year with almost $64 million budgeted deficit. I do not think that is sustainable. I think it is something we will have to address going forward this budget year. And I think the two funds probably that I think are the most pressing would be the debt service fund and the general fund. And I do think a lot of that has to do with using some one-time money for some reoccurring costs.
So very generally, could you describe or outline what our options might be to reduce the deficit to a more sustainable level? And to the extent possible, what might be the cost of beginning to address those deficits and their effect on fund balance?
Really, to address a deficit, we kind of have two options. We can reduce expenditures or increase revenue. I will say our budget is majority personnel, so usually the option we're left with is addressing revenues. Unfortunately, we are limited on the way we can raise revenues as compared to cities and, you know, other government entities. So I do think at some point we'll have to find a way to increase revenue. Unfortunately, we can't increase impact fees, things like that. So I do think at some point we're going to have to look at the penny allocations and things like that as a way to bridge that gap on some of these funds.
And I'd appreciate your thoughts and comments on another aspect that you mentioned briefly. There was $10 million transferred from the debt service fund to the general fund, about 5.5 pennies. Mm-hmm. And as you pointed out, this has to be addressed. So I have a couple quick questions, just for the benefit of those who may not be as familiar. Could you elaborate on what the debt service fund does and what you expect the cost or options to be to address it?
So our debt service fund is where we pay for all debt in the county. And by all debt, I mean any debt issued by county, schools, highway. Any debt this commission authorizes is going to be paid out of our debt service fund. So currently as it stands, we have a budgeted deficit of $10.4 million, and I do think we'll have to have some way to address that with additional revenue. Currently, there's about a $48 million worth of revenue in that fund, and 41 million of it is property tax. So I do think we will have to look at additional pennies going back in there next year.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the director? Harris.
So on the bond, you said it's going to be 4%. So we're looking at, once we borrow money, we're looking at 4% on top of what we thought was going to be. Like, for instance, my point is this. We had 3 school additions that we're getting ready to do. We've already approved them, but we have not borrowed that money yet. Am I correct?
Well, no and yes. So correct, you are correct. We have not borrowed that money, and you only approved the design and for them to go out to bid. You only approved that money, so you have not actually approved the additions.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is that we got to borrow money for those 3 additions. So I'm trying to see, did we take in consideration that's a huge bump for debt?
Well, what I'm saying is that is left to be seen. That is going to be up to Health and Ed and to this committee if you would like to borrow money. There's no requirement, is what I'm saying, to go borrow money for these additions. You're not locked in, is what I'm saying.
Chairman, I have one other question. Not sure, it's not really part of the motion, but or maybe we should vote on or approve the report and then go through the.
We've got a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and do that. All in favor of approving the report signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Irvin.
Yes, I happen to be studying the Private Act, the Budget Private Act, and in section, I believe it's 4G, it talks about a monthly report of the director. And it basically says the Director of Finance makes a report at the end of each month showing the condition of the budget, among a whole list of other things. And it also adds that the most recent of such reports shall be presented by the Director of Finance at each regular session of the county legislative body. And it seems, I think this would be very helpful, very educational and timely to have those reports made every month. I don't envision, and we can coordinate with the director and the chairman, but I'm not envisioning a super long report. It's fairly short, basically along the lines of what we get, but it would give the commissioners the opportunity to ask a few questions if they so choose, and provide kind of a monthly update, basically, I think would over time help with everyone's education and getting up to speed, especially as we're headed into what's likely to be a challenging 2 or 3 years, probably. And I'm not sure if that's part, I guess the parliamentary inquiry would be, is that something that could be just put on the agenda, or does there need to be a motion, which I'll be glad to make, but I think since it's part of the Private Act, I'm not sure even a motion is needed.
We had spoke shortly on this just a few minutes ago. In my opinion, the financial report that you're getting now would take care of this. However, I don't have a problem as long as we're not extending our full commission meeting of giving a report there. You know, I think it can be pretty concise, and I'd ask Michael to just review the Private Act, make sure that's the way we're seeing it, and if so, put together a report, and we'll look at it at our next meeting if I don't see any objection from the committee. I don't see any, so that suffice, Commissioner.
Works for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other question. I know, Michael, you don't have a crystal ball, but do you anticipate anything traumatic happening with our AAA bond rating with what we're facing right now?
I think that really depends on what this body and the commission decides to do going into this budget year. It will be challenging, and I think, I don't think there's anything we can't overcome, but that really is left to be seen on what this body wishes its next year's fund balances to be, and what this body wishes to approve. I think we can definitely keep it if this body would wish. I think that's definitely achievable, but I don't anticipate anything derailing us that would be out of y'all's control.
Okay. I'm going to move item 24, Circuit Court Clerk, the budget amendment forward. She's got an appointment that's pressing, so Melissa, if you would, come on up.
Good evening. I don't know if you want to hear me real loud. Okay, based upon the analysis that we have done on our payroll, we are respectfully asking for 150 as a contingency plan in case we run into issues with the payroll for the remainder of the fiscal year. The money will remain in the general fund, and we're hoping that we will not need it. Currently, payments have been down, and we're working diligently to increase the number of collections and reviewing the options. This has nothing to do with the clerks in itself. This is issues beyond our control, and we will revisit this issue in May.
Okay, you've heard the request. Are there any questions for Ms. Harrell? One thing just to reiterate, what she said is basically we're asking for, or she's asking for, $150,000 contingent upon her needing that. This will still remain in our funds. Say if she ran over $8,000 this coming month, then we'd give her the $8,000, up to $150,000 for that period of time between now and June 30th. So that money's not actually moving into any accounts for her.
Motion to approve the request.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions for Ms. Harrell?
Second.
Commissioner Irving. Hearing none, call roll, please.
Mr. Srinion,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. And she's got one more transfer. Would continue.
I would like to transfer $1,000 from our other charges to our maintenance agreements. And this is for extra copy machine that we got. Copier, this is what you call it.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Reynolds on the second. Any further discussion? Then her budget request. Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinion,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris, yes. Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, go back to the top where we're next up is risk management financial report. Call on Mr. Elam.
Good evening. So I have for the 264 fund, February 2023, you see revenue at $1,798,820. Expenses, $2,746,406. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $947,586. That's for the month of February. The total for the year, you'll see in revenue, $3,565,928. Expenditures, $494,953. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $4,929,025. And then the fiscal year comparison, revenue, $41,850,768. Expenses, $49,533,141. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $7,682,372. And as I mentioned last month, in the 264 fund, majority of that is the run out that we have over the next couple of months from the school's claims in 2022. Remaining claims. 266 fund for workers' comp, month of February 23, there were zero claims. OJI, you had $44,158.20. Year to date, workers' comp, $1,358,041.24. OJI, year to date, $360,624.39. The total for the year to date, $1,718,665.63. The county attorney expenses for the month of February, you have $26,247.24. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the report. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion, please. Thank you, Commissioner Piercy.
Second.
Second. Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
All right, so the next thing I have on my agenda is a recommendation from the Benefits and Insurance Committee. And that recommendation was that Rutherford County government remain with the Standard and MetLife for their respective voluntary plans for the calendar year 2024 with the same benefits and rates. This agreement is contingent upon Rutherford County Board of Education also participating in the plans. Michael, we want to take these separate as far as the Standard and MetLife? Okay. So in the Standard contract, there was an agreement that came before the commission, and their contract was 3 years plus one. So basically, you're just saying you're going to exercise that fourth year in the contract, and the rates to be held the same, and the plan designs to remain the same. The Standard is the long-term and short-term disability insurance for the county. So the motion basically is to renew that contract for another year, contingent upon the Board of Education also participating with us.
Any questions for Mr. Elam on this contract extension?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused. So you said it's contingent upon the Board of Education. I thought the Board of Education went with a state plan. Different thing?
This is a different thing. They did their medical, dental, and vision. They went to the state, but this is the voluntaries, the ancillaries, which is the long-term disability is paid by Rutherford County. Short-term disability is paid by the employees. So this is what you call a voluntary products.
Any other questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion. Chairman Harris moves for approval.
Second.
Second. Johnson. Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, so then the next thing I have is MetLife contract. The MetLife contract was a 3-year contract. It did not have the 4-year or the 5th year that you could exercise. But in speaking with Michael and looking at the MetLife contract, because it did go out to bid, we're asking that just to extend that contract for 2024. And this would be, MetLife is your basic life, voluntary life. That's what, the basic life is paid by the county. The voluntary life is paid by the employees. Accident is paid by the employees, and critical illness is paid by the employees. So basically, we're asking to extend that contract for an additional year. And again, it is also contingent upon the Board of Ed's participation. And one last thing also, I may have forgot to mention, we are holding the rates and the coverage the same as when we went out to bid before.
Mr. Chairman, you're on the insurance committee, aren't you?
No, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Phillips.
Chairman Phillips is.
Chairman Phillips, can you shed some light on what the recommendation was, how it was approved through the insurance committee?
A little bit of clarification on the makeup of the committee. Is that what you're asking?
No, this is dealing with MetLife's contract to extend their contract 1 year for the voluntaries, basic life, voluntary life, accident, and critical illness. They're the present carrier that we have now. So the recommendation from the insurance committee was to extend that contract 1 year.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. I hear a second. Commissioner Gooch seconds. Any other discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
All right, next item, number 6, Cheatham County Agreement for Juvenile Detention. Ms. Duke here, there she is. Welcome.
So before you, you have the contract with Cheatham County for juvenile detention center beds. It's the same contract as all of our other counties. It's for $175 a day per child. The Juvenile Detention Center Board forwarded this on positively, and I don't know that you have any questions about it, but if you do, I'll happily answer them.
Any questions for Ms. Duke? Offering Cheatham County our services. None, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move.
Commissioner Serino,
Second.
Vice Chairman Johnson, thank you, sir. Questions?
Are these contracts that just roll over, or is this basically a rollover?
That's correct. We will probably at some point in the future, I'd say in the next 5 years, update all of them with some new language, but once you establish the contract, until we decide to change the contract, they just continue indefinitely. Just because they have a contract doesn't mean they must use us or that we must accept the young people that they would like to send us. It's still our option as to whether we do that.
Is this rate something that's statutory or agreed, or how's the rate set?
The rate is decided by the county. Our rate has been $175, probably, 10 years or plus. We are still in range with the other facilities that additionally accept out-of-county youth into their centers. Some are as low as 132 a day, and the highest I've seen was in the low 200s per day. So we're kind of in the middle. Mm-hmm.
One thing about these contracts, if there's any individual that for some reason we may not, say a high-profile case, somewhere in the state, we can refuse them. We can also withdraw our offer to house at any time, as well as they can also not bring people to us. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is item 7, Centralized Cafeteria Fund Budget Amendment. Well, invite our school superintendent, Dr. Sullivan, welcome.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Also, just want to hit on real quick, our board will be looking at the ancillary insurance products at our next meeting on March 23rd, and I do believe that has support. So with that question, Commissioner Harris, just want to hit on that. All right, so we have the Centralized Cafeteria Fund Budget Amendment. So Fund 143, and again, this is pretty much a self-funded through revenues with the USDA and student programs with their payments. The fiscal year 22-23 Centralized Cafeteria Fund 143 amendment is to increase revenue and expenditures to recognize the award of the National School Lunch Program Supply Chain Assistant Grant Rounds 2 and 3 from the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. This grant funding is in response to the unprecedented challenges in purchasing and receiving food that operators of the National School Lunch Program NSLP and School Breakfast Program SBP are experiencing in school year 22-23. This reflects the grant award that was approved by the Tennessee Department of Education. This year's grant award motion is $1,430,251, and recommended motion to amend the fiscal year 22-23 Fund 143 to reflect the National School Lunch Program grant award of $1,430,251.
You've heard the request.
Motion to
Harris.
approve.
I have a motion from Chairman Harris. Second. Chairman Piercy. Any other discussion or questions for the superintendent? None, call roll.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And the second thing we had was just an update of our 5-year building plan. This is not asking for funding tonight. This is just an update to give you where we are. We are still waiting on one bid for our high school additions. Oakland High School will come in next Thursday, but our school board did approve a 5-year plan that I believe you guys have online as well. We realize how big of an ask that is. If you're looking at the 5-year total, it's $744 million, which is just astronomical to look at when you think about that perspective. And so we realize how much of a burden that is. We also realize that we have to have a place to educate our students. We are undergoing a zoning study, which I do envision changing this to some degree, because we do have seats that are open in different areas of the county. I'm not sure how much of it can change it, but we are conducting a zoning study that will pretty much have the opportunity to rezone the entire school system for the 24-25 school year. So that is still a year out. But that gets us to our 5-year plan for this year, to where you will see the request is $193 million. It is for an addition to Riverdale High School, Smyrna High School, Oakland High School, and a new elementary school to the west side to relieve overcrowding from Stewart's Creek, Blackman, Browns Chapel, that area. Just a little bit of an update. I wanted to give you an idea, and again, we're not asking for funding tonight, but I did want to give you an idea of what some of the projects came in as. Smyrna High School came in well, so overall at $38.4 million. Unfortunately, we had our Riverdale bid that came in last week. Our board approved it last night, and it came in at $56.3 million. Well, almost $8 or $9 million over what we were expecting. We only are having 2 contractors that have bid on those 2 projects so far. For our pre-bid meeting, I envision just those 2 contractors bidding on the 3rd Oakland High School again, and that comes in next Thursday. Being similar schools, I envision it being around the same amount. And I'm happy to answer and discuss any questions.
Anyone from the committee? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes, I have. Go ahead. Yes, I have a number of questions. Do any of the high schools requesting additions or requesting money have empty seats?
Yes, we have some that have portables, but by capacity would still have empty seats. Right now, Smyrna High School has portables. They have more portables than anyone else, so these additions would give them an extra 200 to 300 seats roughly. Riverdale High School was rezoned, and I also want to bring up that part of this started last year, as you guys are all very well aware. We rezoned Rockville High School because it was overcrowded. So Riverdale right now would have an additional 300 seats with the additions. Currently, Oakland High School probably has between 40 and 60 seats that are open, depending on what, if I was using before early graduates in December. We do have a little bit of a decline in enrollment for the second semester every year because we have students that graduate in December. All of that to say, we would probably gain about 1,200 students roughly seats with these additions.
Okay, so
How many seats did you say we would gain?
About 1,200.
Thank you.
okay, so you're gaining about 1,200 seats total. And that's broken out, well, okay, 300 in Riverdale, 40, 60 in open in
We have 40 or
Oakland.
60 open seats in Riverdale, or in Oakland right now.
Right, 40, 60 open. Riverdale has 300.
And then Oakland would have that extra 500 roughly. So you're looking somewhere between 11 and 200. Smyrna High School, depending if we're using a single wide or a double wide trailer, throws those numbers just a little bit.
So this is how many are open? What's the $300 number? 300.
That's
Number.
with the addition. I apologize. I misunderstood the question. Currently, what schools do we have that have open seats? We have 40 to 60 open seats out of those additions at Oakland High School.
Okay.
That is it. The other schools are well overcrowded.
And Smyrna has 500.
With an addition,
The addition has 500 open.
they'd have 300 open because the additions would add 500 seats to each one roughly.
Okay, so 500 total-ish.
Yes.
Okay. And then, is the school board planning to remove, this has been kind of a source of confusion. Okay, what's happening to the portables? And, because I've got calls about it, and among a whole bunch of other questions that I'm about to ask. But are the portables going to still be there, or are they going to be gone, or what's the plan?
The plan is they will not be at those schools. The plan is they will still absolutely be utilized.
So
We are unfortunately still adding over 1,000 kids a year, and so we basically need to be adding at least one school every school year. When you add in last year that we added over 2,200 kids, I do not envision a scenario to where we could remove portables by these additions.
Okay, so but from Riverdale, Oakland, and Smyrna, all the portables are gone.
We would remove those portables unless we had a huge growth and some development over there that required us to rezone again. But the plan is to remove all those portables from those 3 schools. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're not actually adding any net seats.
We are. So right now,
Okay, so where are you doing that?
let me pull up my, I'm just a second to pull up, I'll give you the exact numbers of enrollment.
Okay.
So if we are looking at our total number of seats, our board, when we were looking at designing these, asked for the total capacity to be 2,500 students.
Okay.
We currently have over 2,000 students at Riverdale and at Smyrna. And I'll pull both of those numbers up here in just a second.
So what I'm shooting for is kind of the net seats at each high school.
That currently, or with these additions?
With the additions.
2,500. Each one would have 2,500.
Okay, but but you're getting rid of all the portables.
Correct. So we would gain about 300 seats roughly at that Smyrna High School. Between 300 and 400. We would gain 300 seats at Riverdale, and we would gain 500 at Oakland.
Okay.
Tell you the exact enrollment. Let me pull up Smyrna first because I have to go to each one individually.
In other words, you make your addition.
Yep.
You make the addition, you get rid of the portables. How many additional seats do you have at each high school?
You'd have 300 at roughly Smyrna, between 300 and 400, 300 at Riverdale, and 500 at Oakland. I say that Riverdale number,
About
As of-
1,000, 1,100.
I say that Riverdale number as of today, but I know because of our rezoning last year, they're going to have much more students than they have right now because they have a grandfathered senior class that is not full.
Okay. And so at roughly 1,000 seats, 136 divided by 1,000, that's 136,000 per seat, basically. So there's got to be something else going on here.
So to give you Smyrna High School, they're at 2165 today.
Okay.
So at 2,500 seats, you're looking at 335 seats we would gain.
Okay.
Pull up Riverdale for you. I've got Oakland High. That was the next one to pull up. Oakland High School of today is 1930, so 70 seats at Oakland High School that are currently open. So you'd have 570 with an addition. And then Riverdale High School has 2,003 students. But again, to put that into perspective, yes, right now it's 500 seats. With our rezoning last year, they are losing a senior class of 395. Their current freshman class is 594. So there's your extra 200 students next year to give you your extra 300 seats.
Okay, so you're about 1,000 net seats,
Roughly. Yeah.
give or take. Okay, and that's 136,000 a seat.
Yes.
Okay, and so can you give me a sense for what else is going on there? In other words, what's the total cost breakout kind of by a broad category so we can kind of have a sense?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going through all this, it's probably been since the dot-com days that I've seen a term sheet for over $100 million, you know, with not a lot of data. And so I'd like to see a lot more data somewhere.
What type of data would you like?
Basically what I'm asking you, plus kind of the breakouts for the broad categories of expenditures, things along those lines.
Yeah, I can bring the bid sheets in and that'll have exactly what every single category would be. Be happy to.
Is that available to the public?
Yeah, it would be.
Is it online, I hope?
I'll go find where all of our bids are. I can do that.
Okay, so that can be put online somehow?
Yeah.
The schools do have their bids on their purchasing, so we can try to make sure they're there if that helps.
I would say Smyrna should be there already. I'm not sure with Riverdale being last week if it's been uploaded yet.
Recognize Mayor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Sullivan, can you tell us with regard to the expansion of Riverdale, Oakland, and Smyrna, what, if any, additional costs, reoccurring costs associated with the expansion and renovation of those facilities we can anticipate?
I would anticipate, of course, your additional just electrical, water, sewer for just the extra square footage. I would anticipate extra cost for having additional staff members at those schools because we would have to add staff members. Where you're saving is outside of building an entire brand new school. You're not adding an additional bookkeeper, an additional secretary, additional 5 or 6 administrative staff. I would request that we add additional administrative staff to add an additional 500 kids, but you're losing that extra building overhead.
So when will this body have those additional reoccurring costs to consider as a part of the overall equation about approving for the renovation and expansion of Riverdale, Oakland, and Smyrna?
With these facilities, not even if we started them tomorrow, not coming online until the 25-26 school year, it wouldn't be until the 25-26 budget year.
I guess what I'm asking, I'm certainly not speaking for the county commission, nor would I presume to, but as a county mayor, I think I would like to know in advance of the commitment of purchasing a bond or putting out a bond for the renovation of these schools, what the additional costs associated for these personnel might be, because I think that might factor into the decision to some extent.
Yeah, I can give an estimate based on number of classrooms versus a teacher, and it'll be It'll be a close estimate, but
Yeah, an estimate's all I'm
yeah,
looking
I can
for.
get a close estimate.
Great, thank you.
So if I could continue with a few things. So you're going to provide a breakout kind of the broad categories.
Whether it's HVAC, roofing, all those different types of things,
Right.
fixture, furniture, yes.
Do you have a sense for how much of it is capital expenditures versus
Yeah,
other?
so on the 5-year plan, if you look at that, you've got the construction cost of the projected was 41.6 million. The fixtures, the construction was 41.6, so you're looking at your overall building costs there. You're looking at equipment, 2 million. You're looking at your design fee of 2.2 million, and then you were looking at your fixtures, furniture at 1.5 million. But I can give you the exact, how the bids came in and where they came from there. Yep, will do.
Sorry. If you'll put them online, that'd be great, as soon as you can.
Chairman Harris, you're recognized.
Dr. Sullivan, the only thing I'll piggyback on what the mayor said. Here's what I'm concerned with. 193,417, you estimated 165 and it went up to 193. What I'm concerned with is the bond market. We're looking at a big interest payment.
Correct.
And that's what I'm scared of is that's something that needs to be put in here too, because then you're going to come back to us and say we need an additional however much money. So is that something that Michael and you can get together on and try to put that, an estimate in that bid?
How do we do that as far as calculating the interest payments and those different types of things into a bid?
Into a bid?
No.
The requested amount, I guess.
He asked for a report for reoccurring costs and how much it's going to cost. I would like to see that added to what he's telling Mayor
Oh, I see
Carr.
what you're saying. So I will go ahead and tell you right now at a 4% interest rate. I did run this number, so I can go ahead and tell you.
Okay.
We're looking, and this is going to be a broad range here, because keep in mind, when we go to close on a bond, there's closing costs, there's attorney fees, just like on a house, but it's just bigger, more. And we really strive for level debt service here. So that's why, but it's not always perfectly level debt service. But, so I'm going to give you a range, but please, this could fluctuate a tad bit, so do not hold me to this number. But I will tell you this range is pretty good if everything holds true with the estimates we have right now. Would be, if we were to borrow, and I'm going to include the request that they made in this, which will be approximately $200 million, including the elementary school, would be anywhere from $14 to $16 million per year of increase in debt service cost. Now, the reason that range is $2 million, it sounds large, but you're also borrowing $200 million. So it could fluctuate based on interest rates, based on what our attorney's fees, all that ends up being. But it should be somewhere in that range if interest rates hold right around that 4%. Is that what you were asking, what our reoccurring would be every year?
Mr. Irvin, you had another question?
I was going to go over the elementary school briefly. How many elementary schools are in that area?
That would be potentially impacted by that zone. You have Blackman Elementary, Browns Chapel, Stewart's Creek, and Stewartsboro that would be directly, if I'm just visualizing that zone, that would be impacted.
And then there's, what about isn't there some Murfreesboro City ones?
Yes, there are, yes.
And then I have 2 or 3 lists that I'm kind of putting together. There's at least one or two charter schools, something along those lines. I think one's been approved.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, and maybe even another Murfreesboro school. How many Murfreesboro schools are over there?
In that direct area, 0 right there by 840. You have Cason Lane, Salem, Overall Creek that are in that other side of Highway 96.
Okay, so could any of those be expanded? I mean, have any studies been done that would enable, or anything along those lines that would enable one or more of those to be expanded?
Yes, and I will tell you that's a conversation we've had with our school system and our school board. We have continued to add to our buildings, and we're to the point now continuing to add to the buildings is not helping the educational process for our students. And ultimately, that is what we're in the realm of doing is educating our kids, and we are balancing that with the ask of the county commission, but also understanding when we have elementary schools that are getting 1,400 to 1,600, that's probably not the best educational setting for students, for kindergartners.
So have you taken into account the city and the charters and all of that?
I met with the city schools director earlier this week. They are going to be requesting to build a school regardless of what we do, because we both agree we need those. I met with the city schools director on Monday, and they are going to, we both agree, we both need a school there. He needs it for overcrowding at his schools. We need it for overcrowding at our schools.
What's the impact of the charter at this point?
For our spring school that we have approved, they have asked to have, and this was a conversation I was having just a minute ago, they purchased 10 acres for 800 students. For us to put 800 students, we would need 25 acres minimum. So I am concerned. They are one of our schools. We have reached out to them. We've had a lot of conversation, whether it's this body or the county commission, about traffic and road development and queuing. I don't know how they fit 800 students on 10 acres. That's not my realm, but I am concerned about that. The other school, Nashville Collegiate Prep, is not a Rutherford County school. They have already pushed off 1 year. They have purchased property. We are still adding 1,000 kids a year, so I'm not sure how much that truly helps us. I'd like to tell you it does.
I want to interrupt for just a moment. I'm going to ask our vice chair to chair the rest of this meeting. I'm going to have to leave.
Sorry, to go back to the charters, I would love to consider they're going to help us tremendously. If they were pulling 100 kids from each different area and each different school, it would help us. To get to 800 students, I don't think they're going to help us very much.
Okay.
Paul, you need.
Yes, sir.
And then, okay, so you mentioned the rezoning study and things along those lines. Can you kind of walk through what the impact, how that works in terms of the new one and the other schools kind of in that area, that, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 elementaries?
So as part of our rezoning study, just about all of our schools on that side of town are full all the way through the Smyrna, 96, Blackman area, except for John Coleman. John Coleman does have about 400 seats. Now, I know that's a strange example to bring up. John Coleman's about 8 miles. But in order for us to utilize open seats, we are going to have to shift students potentially clockwise. So you take a Blackman and move them to Browns Chapel. Browns Chapel and Stewart's Creek to Stewartsboro, some of Stewart's Creek over to Rock Springs to Rocky Fork Elementary, Rocky Fork Elementary to Smyrna Primary to David Urey to, I'm going through Smyrna Elementary over to John Coleman. That is how we are going to have to rezone our entire district to utilize our open seats. And it probably needed to be done. I don't know the last time we did a full district rezone, and we have added schools upon schools upon schools and developments upon developments. So our district lines need to be redrawn. But I do realize that's going to cause a headache as well for our community.
My concern, there's a lot of movement, a lot of, potential development, moving things around, I guess, for lack of a better term. Does it make sense to maybe step back for a year, see how all this settles out? And I'm not suggesting this off the top of my head, but does it make sense to maybe get the rezoning thought through, get through all of the other schools, get the charters thought through, get everything else thought through before we spend, a fair amount of money on an elementary school that may get moved around? I'm just trying to think this through.
I think it ultimately comes down to the number of seats we have. In the first analysis, so we did a growth analysis with our third-party vendor, RSP is their name, this is what they do. They're very concerned we're only bringing 1 elementary school in line in the next 3 years. We still don't have, if we wait and push things off yet again, we didn't build any new schools last year. The last new school we'll have opened will have been Plainview during the 2020 or 2021 school year. And during that time, by this time next year, we will have added between 4,000 and 5,000 students. We are already behind, and I'd also just like to add, we're trying to educate students. We are not asking for more students. I realize the bind that puts the county commission in, but we're also just trying to find seats for kids.
How many new students did you say? I'm sorry, I'm trying to...
You were looking from 2020 into now, so we were sitting between 46 and 47,000 during the COVID year of 2020, and we're sitting at 50,900 right now.
I mean, elementary school is in this area. I'm trying to get a sense for, I mean, that's kind of the focus here.
For this portion?
I understand, you know,
Yeah.
countywide, but I'm trying to get a sense for this area. I mean, what's the need, and does it have to be right away? Could it be put off for a year?
So Stewart's Creek Elementary is sitting over 1,300 students in a school for 1,000, and Blackman Elementary School is sitting at a school of 1,000 that has over 1,100 students. You have the city schools that are also overcrowded that are in that exact area, which is why they're looking to build a new school.
Okay, thank you. And you'll put all this online as well.
I will, and again, I just want to bring up, part of the reason that you don't have all the details is we are not asking for funding today. Today was truly just an overview of here's what we're looking at from a perspective to give a heads up of what's coming the next month and a half. And I appreciate the tough questions. They're fine.
And I'm just trying to sort this out from a one-pager, basically.
Yep.
And asking some questions so that you can put stuff online that's helpful.
Absolutely.
You know, so that, and as soon as you can, if possible.
Can do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
This is just for informational purposes only, and the mayor and Michael's going to expound on it.
Yeah, I've got a question for Michael Smith regarding our conversation about the school bond.
But he's a lot of seats.
Give you a break for a second.
Great.
Michael, the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has recently announced that he anticipates higher interest rates. To what extent does that announcement adversely affect our getting a competitive bond rate market and the timing associated with that before going to the market?
I will say there is a risk the longer we wait, the higher rates will go, because I think the Fed has announced they plan on keeping rates higher. One thing that helps us is we're issuing tax exempt bonds, so they're not necessarily tied to the Fed funds rate. Not to say they're not influenced. One of the things that's hurt us is there's been a low supply of those types of bonds. So that's also one of the things that's hurt us. So yes, I mean, it could tick up another 25 basis points the longer we wait, if that's what you're asking.
It is, and I guess at what point do we make the determination to lock in our rate before we can move forward?
I think our next step is their next bid that's coming back, and I do believe after speaking, I don't want to speak for Dr. Sullivan, but I think my understanding was next Health and Ed meeting, we would either have a number or a request.
I have a request at the next Health and Ed meeting, March 28th.
Thank you.
Which would come next month at budget.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I'd have
You
a,
good?
and so that
Make
one
it
of the
brief.
takeaways.
Make it brief if you would, okay?
Okay. Yeah, just one of the takeaways I have from this, so if a commissioner votes for this, for all the amounts requested for next year for the schools, they'd be voting for an additional expenditure of about 14 to 16 million a year, or well, for 20 years. And at the same time, referring to our earlier conversation, they'd be voting for expenditures to address the $10 million debt service fund transfer to the general fund and to address the annual budget deficit issue that we talked about earlier. You know, if Michael wants to provide any context, that's just a reminder. That's what potentially we would be voting on, you know, if you want to approve it and then fund it. And then for context, do you have a sense for the total school debt, total amount of debt, current school debt added to the total amount requested for 5 years? What would that be? And follow-on question, using the same interest rates, about 4%, what's the annual amount of principal and interest on that total plus the 5-year ask?
You want this one?
Take yours.
Total outstanding debt at the end of this fiscal year, June, would be approximately $450 million for the county as a total. Of that, about 80% of that would be related to schools, so approximately $353 million. So if we were to incur an additional 200, you're looking at 650 million, give or take a few million. So as we said earlier, that would be in addition 14 or 16 million, give or take a million, to an addition to what our current principal and interest expenditures are. Current principal this year that we retired, that was almost $40 million. That's just principal that we retired this year. And if you're asking principal and interest, excuse me, total principal and interest this year was a little less than $60 million. So.
And if anyone has ideas for extra revenue, I'd love to know. We have tried everything we can, but we're in the education business, not the revenue generating business. We appreciate everything that the county commission does, but we're in a world of trouble when it comes to educating, a place to educate our students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Commissioner Irvin, for your analytical experience and expertise. And we will head on to item number 9, Health Department Agreement.
Cameron. The item we have before you tonight is the annual co-op agreement between the state of Tennessee and Rutherford County. And this is for, there's no new funding requested in this document. It merely formalizes the spending agreed upon for this year and the shared responsibility between the state and the county in this current fiscal year. So this represents what passed in June and an amendment that was done in the fall. I do want to pass to Director Smith. He had one bit of clarification for a couple of the figures there.
So I do want to clarify for the record, on the first page of this co-op agreement, under section A1, there's a dollar amount in red of $663,668. That dollar amount needs to be revised to $1,042,723. And then under section A1A, the document has a dollar amount of $538,045, and that dollar amount needs to be changed to $917,100. The numbers I read you are already in our current budget. There is no new funding or no new increase. Those just need to be corrected in this document between Rutherford County and the state. I just needed that on the record for the resolution next week at commission.
Need a motion? Need a motion for this? Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
From Mr. Gooch, second from... Don't everybody speak at once.
Mr. Sereno, second, I believe.
I second.
Okay, Commissioner Shanto. Call the roll, Mark.
Mr. Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy.
Yes.
Okay. You have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir.
I need you to look into something.
Certainly.
We had a program with the schools that was the life skills. It was a grant, and I kind of lost track on this with COVID hit us.
Right.
I really need you to look into that because that's something that we had decided to go from 3 schools to 12.
Okay. Yes,
And
sir.
I want to make sure if you could do, and I'm Commissioner Harris, if you can just let me know about that. I know it's there,
Yes.
but I need to get the details on it, so I never have a chance to talk to you, so is that something you could do?
Absolutely, Commissioner Harris. I am aware of the program you're talking about. They do have a new person in charge of that, and so they're ready to kind of reboot that after COVID as well. So I can be glad in this following week to catch up with you and get you the information on it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're ready for item number 10, general fund budget transfer for GIS. Mr. York, how are you, sir?
Chairman,
Thank you.
committee, mayor. This is a request to transfer from GIS's account 51760 from the line 799 to 709, an amount of $18,550. This represents savings that we realized that we want to transfer to another line item so that we can update some hardware that needs to be updated.
This is not any new money. This
No,
is
sir.
transferred.
No, sir,
Okay.
just a
Any
transfer.
questions?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Mr. Piercy. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Irvin. Call the roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch? Yes. Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy? Yes.
Thank you.
I was too busy marking. Okay, thank you very much. Next item, number 11, application for animal-friendly grant from PAWS.
Good evening. We come before you every year asking to apply for an animal-friendly grant through the state of Tennessee. They've not released the details of that yet, but typically it is $5,000 max to apply for, and then we get whatever they give us. There is no county match there. So just seeking approval to apply.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve, in second. All right. Call the roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Motion carried. Okay, and number
12.
12 would be the contract for teen learning grant for youth services. How are you?
This is a grant. It's an annual grant contract between the Department of Children's Services, which provides pass-through funds to the Genesis Learning Center. There is no matching funds for this grant. The grant period is from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, and the amount of $417,696.
Motion to approve, second. On second.
Quick question, what are day
I'm sorry?
treatment services, just so we have kind of an idea?
This is an alternative school placement, and they provide counseling services through their program for children. They have different life skills and different type programs.
Okay. Call the roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Thank you very much. 13, transfer from the sheriff's office.
Good evening. Got an amendment. This amendment is being requested for the 2022 Justice Assistant Grant that allocated equally to the City of Murfreesboro and the Sheriff's Office from the Bureau of Justice Byron's JAG local allocation. We're requesting to accept the $30,893 and place it into our law enforcement equipment line item.
Motion to approve, have a
Second.
second?
He has two other items,
All
if
right.
you want to take those
All together.
together.
Okay.
If there's any objection, yeah.
Any questions? Okay.
The next one is this budget amendment is recognize insurance revenue received related to the sheriff's office and appropriates this revenue for supplies and materials, requesting to $20,193 from insurance recovery and place it into our jail other supplies and materials. The next amendment is to provide additional funds for overtime needed for employees covering vacant positions, requesting take $100,000 from our dispatcher's radio operator salary and $100,000 from the youth services officer salary and place the $200,000 in our overtime line item.
Call the roll, Mark.
Mr. Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, was there a motion and second on that?
Yeah, Commissioner Harris? Yeah.
You got another
Go
one?
ahead.
There was, okay.
Opioid, item 14.
Got some grant requests. We're requesting to apply for the financial year 23 Bureau of Justice Assistance Comprehensive Opioid, Stimulant, and Substance Use Site-Based Program Grant. This is a 3-year grant, 100% funding. We're requesting to apply for $741,282. If awarded, we request the mayor to be able to accept and sign for it.
Any questions? Motion? Motion to approve?
Second.
Got a second? Shanto? Call the roll, Mark.
Mr. Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I got some more requests. We're requesting to apply for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Financial Year 23 Connect and Protect Law Enforcement Behavioral Health Response Program Grant. This grant is an escalating percentage match. Years 1 and 2 would be 20% match. Year 3 would be a 40% match. We're requesting $550,000 on this grant. With this grant, we want to work with volunteer behavioral health care to have co-responders riding with our deputies. They will assist us responding to individuals in the community having mental health crisis to provide de-escalation, assessment, and resources to the services. The co-responders and the deputy will be working together will provide better outcomes and services to those in need. If we are awarded this grant, we're requesting the mayor to be able to accept and sign.
Any questions? Comments?
That
Motion?
one would come back because it has a match, so that would come back for approval. The mayor wouldn't have authority to sign that one until we approve the match on that one.
All right, so sorry.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve it, Mr. Chairman.
Gooch?
Second.
Second, Mr. Harris. Call the roll, Mark.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
We're requesting to apply for the Tennessee Highway Safety Office and Team Grant. The Tennessee Highway Safety Grant pays for the overtime and equipment for the deputies working saturation and traffic enforcement. We're requesting $125,000. The Team Grant pays for the overtime and equipment for the deputies working the driving education program. We're requesting $20,000 in that part. We apply for these grants every year. They run from October to September. We're asking for the mayor to be able to accept and sign for it if awarded.
This will be items 16 and 17.
Any questions or comments?
Are there no matching funds?
No, sir.
Motion to approve them both.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Call the roll, Mark.
Mr. Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Last week, our maintenance personnel found one of the 4 water tanks, hot water storage tanks leaking. When I originally asked to put this on the agenda, I was hoping to get some prices on repairing them. We're waiting on 5 companies and even an engineer to give us some pricing. So I'm recommending us take this back to public safety at the end of the month to give us some cost to do amendment.
Questions or comments? Motion?
Want to defer this for 1 month?
Sir?
You want to defer this to 1 month for?
Yeah, we'll
take
defer
back?
it to public safety.
Okay. All right. I don't know that there's a motion needed on that. No.
Thank y'all. Have a good evening.
Roll call.
There's not a motion.
Okay,
There's not a motion.
okay, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, this is going at 100 miles an hour. All right. Number
19.
19? Okay. Just bear with me. Recovery Court grant. 2% set. I don't see anybody from the Recovery Court.
My understanding was Lachelle was coming to present that.
Yeah, I thought so. I sent the agenda to him.
Be up to this body if y'all'd like, I can discuss it or we can defer it till she, if we want to defer it a month for her to come next month.
Put it on the hill.
I have a question. So is this a do we have to match something on this? And let me tell you what I'm getting at here. This is on opioid, and this is something we might can send through the Opioid Abatement Council and maybe have funds that are available for that instead of the county. You understand what I'm saying?
Paying the match on it. Yeah. 25% match on this one.
25%? So that could be something that the money that we have in our fund might be able to use that towards matching this.
It could, and this year though, she has currently 2 empty part-time positions, so this is not going to require a budget amendment this year. Not to say we can't, see if that route would work, especially for next year, but this year too.
This is number 19. This is not the reclassification.
This is a 25% match over 4 years, isn't it?
Correct.
Isn't that right, Mark?
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, you're on 18. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Item number 19.
19. I'm sorry. I got off on agenda item. I'm sorry.
I think he probably could use that.
Would it be good if we deferred this to the Opioid Abatement Committee? Or is this something that we could do? I'm just trying to save us money out of our debt service.
Right. I think this bid, it states that this bid is due on, or the application is due April 11th.
April 11th? That's good, because we meet on Wednesday.
It's up to the will of this body, I think. Yes.
Do we need to take any action on this? Yes, sir. Okay, that's fine.
I tell you what, I'll make a motion to send this to the Opioid Abatement Committee to be discussed.
Have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? I believe we can say aye on that, don't you? Yes.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Oh, my goodness. Reclassification of position in the Recovery Court, item 20. I guess we'll bypass that one then. All right. Ambulance Service Fund position.
We're going to defer number 20, is that correct? What you said, Commissioner? We're going to defer number 20?
Yes.
Good evening. I am asking to reclassify 2 paramedic 1 positions to paramedic 2 positions. That's around a $2,000 annually increase for those 2 steps. We had We had 5 of those positions in our budget, but we had 7 people that completed the extra training to receive that increase. So I was asking for 2 more, and we have it within within that line item.
I'll move that we approve that, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Okay. All right. Any questions or anything on that? Did we? Mr. Irvin? No. Okay. All right. Have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Okay. Call the roll.
Commissioner Shrina?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Okay. Item 22.
I got confused on the next.
State Financial Stimulus Accountability Group funding for Forensic Center.
That would be me, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
That would be me.
Very good. Mayor, go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that we go out of session and allow Denise Martin, come and make a presentation. It's going to be an abbreviated presentation because most of the body has already seen this presentation once, and in some cases twice. This began at Health and Ed, and then, it was in Public Safety, and then went to Health and Ed. Come on up, Denise, if you don't mind. So a little update on this. This is the funding, the proposed funding for the Regional Forensic Center for Rutherford County. Currently in Tennessee, there are 5 forensic centers: Shelby County, which is Memphis, Davidson County, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Knox County, and the Tri-Cities area. We're making an application, a grant application that the state is administering through what's called the FSAG group. It's federal stimulus money. And as a matter of fact, we spoke to the Commissioner of Health last week, Denise and I did, and we spoke to the Commissioner of Finance, State Commissioner of Finance today. And so we are making, this is part of the presentation that we are making for stimulus funds to establish a regional forensic facility in Rutherford County. So, Ms. Martin, if you will make that presentation, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time. I know that you've had a long session tonight, so like the Mayor said, I'm going to do an abbreviated version of the presentation I gave to Public Safety and Health and Education. Of course, that's recorded on RCTV if you wish to watch the whole thing, if you haven't had the joy of listening to me talk for that long. Just wanted to give you a few highlights, though, in regards to why we're asking for this. Obviously, this is not a new idea. We've talked about this when former EMS Director Hudges brought it to your attention. But the pandemic really changed that from a plan to a need. Currently, we are doing about 170 death investigations every month. Our EMS supervisors are performing that from 4 p.m. to 6 a.m. in addition to the 3,300 runs they're doing every month. So from a county medical examiner's standpoint, we really have got to the point of growth that we need a true forensic center. Our death numbers have increased by population. Our autopsy numbers have increased in line with those population increases. During the pandemic, we had a stark and significant increase in the numbers of deaths and, in turn, autopsy performance. And this was due to sort of an unanticipated a side effect of the pandemic and unfortunately unanticipated victims of the pandemic. It really truly hit those that have mental health disorders and substance abuse disorders with great impact. So we saw our overdose numbers, our fatal overdose numbers, jump significantly at the beginning of 2020 through 2021. For, I think, this particular committee's attention. I think we need to consider the cost to the county for those autopsy performances that are being performed by an out-of-county for-profit company. They've increased 3 times since 2020. The last 2 times that they increased was within an 11-month period, mid-fiscal year, and with very little notice to us. So we've actually had an increase to, we currently pay $2,300 per autopsy. So this is going to take us this year in 2023 to a higher cost per year than it even did at the height of the pandemic. And I think that's something very significant to keep in mind. So we truly need the ability to control our forensic services as well as to control the budget that goes along with those. The pandemic was truly a slow-moving mass fatality event. If we were truly to experience an immediate need to respond to one, such as a trail derailment, a commercial plane crash, even another pandemic, this is going to truly hit us hard, and we are not prepared to respond. We don't have that surge capacity storage to be able to cope with those sort of numbers. So we no doubt anticipate that our death and our autopsy numbers are going to increase along with those populations, but we're still going to see the impact of the opioid epidemic to go along with it. The inflation, cost of living, we can certainly expect those sort of increases, but we've noticed that, there's a strong indication that our vendor fee hikes are going to be attributed to the fact they are a for-profit company with branches in other states as well. Our numbers for deaths and autopsy have dropped a little bit back to pre-pandemic increases, but they are going to continue to increase along with those population numbers, so that this is going to continue to be an increase in need for having our own forensic services controlled by our own county.
Are there any questions for Ms. Martin?
I do have a copy of the PowerPoint if anybody would like to just see a paper copy as well for those highlights.
Yes, I have one. Has there been a study done on cost of setting this up, the operational cost, the maintenance cost, based on what it's going to save us against the $2,300 per person?
Yes, there has been. And when we made our presentation today to Commissioner Bryson, we had to go in great detail, not only what the initial construction funding costs were that we were asking for, but we also had to give a projection on what the operational costs would be. Initially, what we're looking at is a first-year operational cost, which would be different than the third-year operational cost. And the reason that would be is the first-year operational cost would be confined to servicing Rutherford County. But eventually, this particular facility is going to service a population of anywhere between 1 and 1.2 million people. So obviously, the operational costs would grow, but those operational costs would not be borne by Rutherford County. They would be borne by the additional service that this facility would provide to outlying counties. So what that does is that creates a revenue source. And so what we're trying to do, Ms. Martin and I are trying to do, is create a facility that has a zero additional cost to it back to the county. Now, I'm not, Mr. Commissioner Pierce, I'm not making that promise. I'm just saying that's our goal. Because currently what we're doing is we're paying $2,300 per autopsy, and we perform about 350, 360 autopsies a year. That number is going to grow because of our population growth. So we're going to pull that dollar amount back on an ongoing yearly basis. And additionally, as this facility's capacity grows, it also will be able to service outlying counties. Again, we expect to service 10 to 12 additional counties with a total population coverage of $1 to $1.2 million as existingly defined. So I hope that answers your question, because what we're putting together is 2 different budgets. One is a first-year budget, which is services Rutherford County, and then there's a budget that is constructed that would be on about year 3 after it's operational, that would provide that coverage that I mentioned earlier.
I appreciate the in-depth detail of your answer, Mayor Carr. But my question was, how much will it save us off of the $2,300 we are paying currently?
So what we're forecasting currently is that what we're paying currently is $2,300 per autopsy. We expect that number to go up because, as Ms. Martin said, that price has risen twice in the last 18 months. Would that be right? Okay, so in the last year, we're calculating doing autopsies to outlying counties for $2,100 an autopsy. So we actually are going to provide a savings to outlying counties. So I'm not sure how to answer your question, except that as our population grows, we generate those savings as a result of retaining those autopsies into Rutherford County.
My point trying to get to.
Yes, sir.
Is it worth the investment to do all of this to save a couple $300 or not?
Yeah.
Because you may not can answer my question yet, and I understand that.
No,
but,
I certainly don't want to. I'm not going to mislead anybody. Our projections say we can, and I will give you some really loose numbers because our presentation is tentatively scheduled on March 22nd. So we have to get that confirmed. And so much of what we know will be, so much of what we're anticipating will be known on March 22nd. But this is what, let me just tell you what Hamilton County and Knox County have done, and that is somewhat the litmus or the paradigm that we're working within. When Knox County and Hamilton County made their proposal to the FSAG group, they each asked for $10 and $20 million of state funds, 10 for Hamilton and 20 for Knox, and they each provided approximately a $4 and $8 million match. Our match, we're going to ask for $16 million, and our match is going to be very similar to that in equation. In other words, 1/3, whatever that is. And so our part of this, including the land that we're going to provide, is going to be about $8 million, but that includes $2.5 million for the land, because we have 10 acres up on Wakeling Lane in Smyrna that this particular facility would be located at. So we're looking at a outlay from Rutherford County of about anywhere from $5 to $6 million. So that is our, quite honestly, Commissioner Pearson, that is our skin in the game. The state would then have $16 million that they would deliver, and for the construction of this facility, then we would assume the operating costs, as I said earlier, for the facility after that. Am I answering your question?
You didn't give me anything I could write down, but that's okay.
Well, I'm doing the best I can, Commissioner. I mean, I guess, we can, I'm not trying to be obtuse. I guess I'm not understanding what your question is, because I'm giving you all the information I have.
Black and white. I'm trying to see if it's worth the county's investment based on what it's going to save the county. In my
opinion, absolutely. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think so.
Mr. Chairman, that the cost savings from not having to send autopsies outside of the county would be somewhere between $750,000 to $1 million a year.
That depends. That only depends if he has contracts with the outside counties. So do you have those guarantees that they'll come to us?
Well, no, sir, it doesn't depend on that. That's the savings we receive based on the autopsies we do in Rutherford County. We're doing approximately 350 autopsies a year, costing us $2,300 apiece. That's what we save by doing them internally, because the cost of us doing an autopsy is going to be less than us sending it to the forensic center in Nashville. So we save that. So we don't have any agreements, Commissioner, at all, only because the politics of getting agreement in advance of getting the forensic center makes it difficult. I do have some very positive conversations that I believe I can rely on, whereby we believe confidently that within a 3-year period, this particular facility will be close, if not at capacity.
Okay, let me see if I got this right. So you're wanting us to okay you tonight to ask for a grant for $16 million?
That is correct.
That's correct, okay.
With the expectation that there will be a match on our part, an undetermined match, but we will have to come back to this body to get that approved. There's no question. That we're not asking for a blank check.
Okay, I got you right there. So here's my question. So I see the 16 million. I see what you're doing here. Then you said something about 8 million, which would be our investment.
Yes, sir.
You're telling me that you can build a top forensic center.
That's what I'm telling you.
I have one other question.
Go ahead.
Chairman Phillips made the comment that it would save us $7.5 million a year. 700 up to me. Okay.
Have any other questions or comments? Sure.
One thing, by speeding through this presentation, I feel like I'm remiss and I did not add some other points in there. The other secondary objections we'll be looking at with this facility is to be a true training and education facility. Therefore, we're looking to partner with not only the State Medical Examiner's Office, but also with MTSU and potentially Meharry Medical School. By having that training and education program, particularly with MTSU, there's a potential revenue stream there. There is a severe lack of training and education for medical legal death investigators and forensic pathologists in this state as well as the country, quite frankly. If we are able to partner with MTSU and we have a commitment from the Forensic Institute of Research and Education that they wish to partner with us if we're successful in building this facility, there's a potential for revenue streams from that education from outside of the county to have those types of seminars and conferences and courses going on there too. So there's other revenue streams available. Also, there's some large federal grants that are available to us if we partner with a higher an education institution such as a university and medical school too. So not only would we be looking to essentially self-sustain with those other counties that will be offering forensic autopsy service to, but there's a lot of other additional revenue streams to be able to maintain the facility and continue on with that in regards to our budget.
Any other questions? I've got a comment. If we're to maintain the status of being such a progressive county, and we are so strapped, and the mayor will agree with me, that our ability to generate revenue is kind of slim, okay? So to me, this is an opportunity to generate revenue to help with our tax base. So to me, it's the prudent thing to do. So that's all I have to say, and I think it's time for a motion, one way or the other.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And let's have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, and then we have discussion of the, okay,
23.
fire and emergency response grant, fire issue, excuse me there. Put me in timeout there.
I'm here tonight to request your approval to apply for a FEMA Safer Grant for 30 firefighters. This will be a 3-year grant at 100%, no cost to the county. We should know something by September 30th. If we do receive the grant, we have 180 days, which will be about 6 months to interview and to have openings for these positions to be filled. And so it will be around the first of the year before the grant would take place, which would put us around 2027 before we'd have to take on that cost of the firefighters. As you see, there'd be an approximate amount of $4 million $4.5 million for the grant. And that would cover 2 of the stations that we're building.
Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, we'll have a motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Mr. Srinion?
Yes.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Wait, I have a question, Mr. Farley. Our volunteer firemen that we have now, are you having any conversations from them about being short on money or operational funds due to the cost of parts, fuel, anything like that?
Well, we on the they pay for their own fuel, but I think 2 budget years ago I took over the cost of maintaining the new engines we provided. So we paid through our budget to maintain those vehicles, to do the oil changes or anything that may go wrong with them. So all that's controlled under my budget. So that way those trucks are being maintained and maintenance like they should be.
But the other equipment they have that does not belong to the county, they're responsible for maintaining all of that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 25, discussion of Doors of Hope subrecipient agreement for the community.
It's going to be me. So the previous few months, we've had a subrecipient agreement on there that we've deferred as we waited on certain information from the state to get us that grant contract and those agreements. The state was delayed in getting us that. Well, over the last week or couple weeks, we have been in discussion with Doors of Hope. We've been in discussion with the state. And if you remember, a month or 2 ago, we contracted with GNRC to advise us, help us fill out any reports that are necessary with the CDBG grant. And over the last few weeks, the scope has changed from what was originally presented to this body and to the commission. Originally, this grant or project was presented as strictly a pass-through to this body, and that has changed a little bit. And so with that changing in scope, felt it was necessary to bring that back for y'all to give us some direction to if you wanted us to continue pursuing, if you did not. But what has changed is this is no longer just a pass-through. So Rutherford County will be responsible for purchasing and bidding. Going through our purchasing procedures, we will be the grantee, and Doors of Hope will be the beneficiary. And the other things that have changed is we are required to put a 5-year lien on this building. That is in the federal grant requirements because to make sure the federal government wants to make sure they get a return on their investment. But the biggest thing for us that's changed is the scope and purchasing and the liability portion. So we originally thought that we would just pass this money on and Doors of Hope would be doing the purchasing. Now this is going to have to run through our purchasing procedures, through our purchasing committee, and then through the mayor's office as far as bidding it. And then on top of that, we've talked with Nick, the county attorney, on liability. I don't think there's any way to absolve us of all liability from this because we will be the ones essentially working with Doors of Hope, but we'll be the ones hiring, bidding out the general contracting and stuff like that. So with that change in scope, I just need some direction from this body, from this committee, to see if this committee still wants us to move forward, because it is a vast change in scope and liability. And with that, I'll take any questions. I think there's one here.
Explain the liability just a bit, Michael. Specifically, let's assume that an employee or a volunteer or an intern is involved in some activity that subjects Doors of Hope to litigation. To what extent is the county then held liable because of the conduct or the fact that we're now having to litigate that? What is our role in that? Can you define that a little bit?
I think our main concern liability-wise is let's say we hire a contractor who does a negligent job or something. That's been mine and Nick's conversation as far as if they don't build something to code or somebody was to get hurt on the job site, because it's us hiring that contractor, it's us hiring that architect.
So you're saying it doesn't extend to the conduct of those?
I don't believe so, but that would be a Nick question if we needed further
explanation.
question. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I do believe there are a couple individuals from Doors of Hope here tonight. I do know they wish to move forward. I do want to, we have talked to them. However, this is a big change in scope. So we don't generally plan to have personnel to bid out these type of pass-through grants. Really, we have a grant coordinator on staff, and the mayor's office has really one person that does purchasing. So that's why this really changed in scope. And so I just need some direction from this body or committee.
Commissioner Urban, you have?
How much money are we talking about?
I'm going to give you exact dollar amount because I knew I was going to get asked that. So the grant itself is $710,000. It does require an in-kind match that Doors of Hope is providing. And that in-kind match, I do believe, is $12,500 for a total of $722,500.
Would it be possible to put together kind of a term sheet that has this? These are the amounts, this is what's covered, this is the liability piece, just so that we could make a little, I understand what you're saying, but a little bit more informed decision before we move forward to a full. Is that possible?
I believe I'm going to need the county attorney's help as far as the legal liability question, because that is outside of my area of expertise, to be honest. As far as, I do know when me and Nick talked, Nick felt he could try to mitigate some of our legal or liability exposure, but at the same time, we are going to be having to put a lien on this building for 5 years. That's not our choice. That's just the grant requirement, the federal government requirement that's telling us we have to do that. And Nick said, I don't know that we could absolve all liability, since it would be us, our purchasing committee, choosing the contractor, choosing the architect, and we have to do different phase environmental studies. So we would be having to bid out those things. So that would be something I can get with Nick. Because really this is, and they can speak to exactly what they were wanting if they need to, but this is in addition to their facility. I don't know the approximate square feet off the top of my head, but those were our main concerns from the county side was now it's going to have to run through the purchasing committee here and require some additional legwork on the county end.
Michael, can you, is this particular grant time sensitive? In other words, are we constrained by a calendar date? Because with this new information about the requirements of the grant and the additional responsibilities potentially of the county, and the fact that my office certainly hasn't had an opportunity to determine how we quantify that reliability, especially with regard to purchasing and those things, I would like, whether this body approves it or not, I think it would be a good idea to understand what it is we're approving with regard to the obligations of the county. Does that make sense?
I would agree.
So my question is this grant?
It expires,
yes.
The end date of this grant is, according to the grant contract that I have in front of me, is 2026.
So how long does this body have to approve it, is what I want to know.
I know the state has granted us a preliminary extension for giving them back signed documents for at least a month. I can ask them if they would extend it longer if we would need more time to bring this back. I do think if we need more answers to the liability question, we would need to get the county attorney to also be present.
I just don't have enough information to make a determination on how much the mayor's office purchasing and the liability, what we're talking about. And so I mean, if this body were to ask me for a recommendation, I just wouldn't have one to help guide this body on moving forward. I think I would like to see us approve the grant, but before we approve the grant, I'd like to know what our responsibilities and obligations are related to the grant are before we do that, instead of knowing that on the backside. That's the only thing I'm saying, gentlemen. But obviously, this is your decision, and I will certainly respect it. But I'm not saying no to the grant. I'm just saying I'd like to know what we're saying yes to, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a recommendation that we refer this back to committee, or you want?
I would, based upon the comments I've heard, I would recommend that we defer it. Would it be deferred back to this committee, or did it originate in another committee?
Okay.
I do not know. Mark, do you know where this originated originally? It was before I got here.
Yeah, it just came straight to this committee because it was a grant, I believe.
And originally, most pass-through grants will come straight to this committee, you know, because it doesn't involve, and that's why, you know, normally these things don't come back to any committee once they're just a pass-through. And so I think I agree with the mayor. I think this grant is a needed grant. I know Doors of Hope would like to see it happen. However, we just couldn't move forward without letting this body know and have a say in the change in scope. And I would just feel more comfortable having Nick's presence to talk about the liability. That's just not my level of expertise on the legal side.
Do you think that all of our questions can be addressed prior to the next budget committee meeting?
Yes, I just think, I'm trying to think of, I can have Nick come to the next budget committee meeting, maybe?
Well, I mean, I guess in the meantime, if we wait a month, y'all can already be in conversation to know the answers to all of your
100%.
concerns.
I was trying to think of a quicker way, but yes, I 100% do agree.
So if the mayor's office had 30 days or till the next budget meeting, if the mayor's office had 3 or 4 weeks to do a little research to quantify the risk, the obligation, the process necessary to award this grant, I would think that we could find that out in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we could come back with some information about exactly what our obligation and responsibilities are with regard to helping Doors of Hope with this grant. I don't see why we couldn't.
Well, if it requires a motion, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we defer this until next month.
Second. Any other questions, comments? I agree that there's a lot of unanswered questions that clarified, so we could do a roll call, not necessarily a roll call vote. We could do.
Yeah, you just do
all
a
in favor,
voice
say
vote.
aye.
You could do a voice vote. You could do a voice vote.
Okay. Roll call.
You want to do a roll call? Okay. Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
All right, we're ready
Mr.
for
Chairman,
some other
Michael, are you
business
going
now?
to require,
Go ahead.
are you going to request an extension of the deadline?
Yes, I will. Yes, me or Reba One will reach out. Doors of Hope is here tonight. I'll probably speak to them after. If they're not here after, I'll give them a call tomorrow, and we'll talk about the next steps.
Okay, we got other items.
I do believe the next two are probably mine.
Sorry?
The next two items are probably mine as well.
Application for domestic violence stop grant.
So this is coming from me and Reba again. We're requesting to apply for the STOP grant, and the reason it's on here tonight under other business is we just received this, and they have to have documents uploaded by March 27th as a request to apply, and so it will come back after if we are successful in awarding this, because it does have a match, but we're requesting to apply for a 3-year contract for the STOP grant, or for domestic violence STOP grant, I'm sorry.
Motion to apply for this, correct? Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call or voice?
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
All right, general fund amendment for health department improvements.
So back in April, when I went back and looked this up, it was April of 2022. This body and the commission passed for passed a resolution allowing for some renovations through ARPA funding at the health department. The total funding, the total part of that request was $600,000 with a $150,000 match from the county, with the state bearing $450,000. That was approved back in April of 2022. That resolution is on your iPads. That was a $150,000 match for us to be spent out of our ARPA funds. However, there was never a budget amendment attached to that. And so that budget amendment to fund that is what you have before you tonight. Now, the reason you see it coming out of unassigned fund balance was because we were planning to use the revenue loss money out of ARPA that rolled into the unassigned fund balance of the general fund. So it is ARPA money. It just happened to roll into the unassigned fund balance. But this budget amendment accompanies what was passed last April.
Any questions or comments? Committee. Motion and second. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Commissioner Srinion?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Any other business to come before this committee? Mayor, do you have any other comments? Motion to adjourn? Okay, we are adjourned.
What?